Wow.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started and be timely. It's 11 o'clock my time, 12 noon Eastern, and 9 o'clock for Suzette. So thank you so much for being up early, everyone that's out that way, and all of you for coming this morning. We want to welcome you to Thought Leader Thursday, or TLT as we call it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to go ahead and ask Sherry. Sherry Johnson, would you do us an opening treatment? Would you be willing to do that?
Oh, there's nothing I like better than praying out loud.
I knew that. I knew that about you.
So I invite you all to just nice, easy breath. Remember that breathing in is inspiring. And spirit's what we're breathing in. I know that there is only one mind. That mind is infinite and eternal. It is the repository of all wisdom, all intelligence, all imagination, and all creativity, and it expresses uniquely and wonderfully in every single one of its creations. That means each one of us has instantaneous and total access to all of the wisdom, all of the creativity, all of the intelligence in the universe. We're breathing it. We're swimming in it. We are expressing it in every mood, in every thought, in every feeling. It's what brought us here to this place at this time. And it's what will grow in us and through us as we listen to Reverend Suzette. Carry us on throughout the rest of this day and continue to grow, continue to blossom, continue to stretch. And I'm just so grateful. The truth of this prayer, for the consciousness of this group, and for the opportunity of this meeting. So I release this word into the law, knowing that it was divinely inspired and it is made manifest through infinite and unfailing law. And I invite you to anchor this with me by repeating together. And so it is. And so it is.
And so it is. So it is. Thank you, Sherry. Yeah. So I do want to remind everyone that we encourage questions and comments. With our speakers moving forward, if you raise your hand, John will be paying attention and give me a little shout out in the chat to let me know that someone's waiting to speak or to have a word here. So feel free to do that. And now let me go ahead and introduce our speaker for today, Reverend Suzette Wehunt. And I had the pleasure of meeting her in San Diego when ANTN, we did our retreat, our annual retreat at her own center. And she was so gracious, and it was just such a wonderful place and a wonderful time to be there and to meet her. Got to meet her again when she was one of our speakers for our ANTN retreat in the fall, in October, and she was just amazing. So I'm looking forward to hearing pieces from that as well. Let me just give you a little bit of her bio. She started in ministerial school when she pioneered video conferencing for the Holmes Institute and ministers to be worldwide. Today, she brings together individuals who are dedicated to a spiritual path, tapping into their potential to be an expression of God to others in the entire world. Suzette is the manager, as I said, of Holmes Center for Spiritual Living. You can find her at www.omcsl.org. Today, Suzette is going to be talking. When I called her up and asked her would she be a speaker, and asked her what was she passionate about, and she talked about losing that intuitive voice, and that is something that I hear from lots of people that I move around with. How do I know? How do I know it's God? How do I tap into that voice? How does it come and go? Sometimes I can hear it, sometimes I can't. So that really resonated with me when she shared that, and that was one of her stories. So her story today, she talks about what it's like to lose that voice, that God voice that guides and directs your path. And she's going to go on to discuss what her life looked like during that time and how she moved through it. Because that's the thing, isn't it? We're all going to go through something. And the question is, how do we move through it? So I'm going to stop talking now and have Suzette start to share us with us, losing my intuitive voice and whatever else you wish to speak about. Thank you.
Okay, you're great. Thanks, PJ. And
Yeah.
I didn't know your name was Paula, so now I know it's Paula.
Me,
Yeah, just PJ. Yeah,
it's Pamela. PJ, Pamela.
Pamela. Oh, Pamela.
Mhm.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, thank you all for being here. When I'm kind of at an angle, so I'm going to try and look at each one of you at some point during this talk. And I hope what I have to offer is helpful. So I want to start with a little story. Let me ask a question first. How many here are kind of new to ministry or have just new to ministry? Raise your hand if you have been. Couple, 3, 2, okay, good. The reason I ask that question is that when we first start out in ministry, I think what happens to us is that we want to please everybody. We want to grab the people. We want to bring them in. And we think everybody's got great intentions. And I think we do that with an open heart. When I started my ministry, I actually left a very large church and started from scratch. And when I started with scratch, I had like 8 people, and then a few people would come in. Well, I had an individual that came in that sounded really good, and I'm gonna use the word appearance. Appearance is really important. So, and they were really good at marketing, and their ideas sounded great, and yet over about I'd say 8 months to a year, there was something that happened. And what happened to me anyway, and so when I speak, it's about me, it's not about what you're experiencing, but you might have experienced this, is that their voice got louder and louder and louder and louder. And as their voice got louder and louder, my voice of intuition went down because I'm like, put all my power into this individual. Now, I think their intentions were good. And I think that they meant well, but I stopped listening to that guidance of which way to go. And there started to become a separation. And what I noticed during that time is it became me against you. And yet I was the senior minister. And so I had to really, well, the other part of this, which I think is important, and I don't know if this happens to anybody, but I started to notice that whatever I did, they said was wrong. Interesting. It was an interesting dynamic. And I kept going, that's interesting that it's wrong, but I'm the one that has the money and I'm the one that's funding all these different projects and I'm the one that's, doing all the legwork, and yet I'm wrong. Now, in the beginning, I didn't pay attention. And I think that that's kind of normal when you start ministry. You give everybody the highest intention. So what eventually happened was we had a meeting in their home, actually. And we got into this dynamic again. And I heard the voice probably for the last time say to me, it's time to get up and leave, which was quite interesting because, again, that there was that dynamic of that loud voice opposed to the guidance. And I got up and they were like stunned. And I went, well, you seem to know it all. I think I'll let you just know it all, and I'm going to leave. And so I left. But when I left, and it was very dynamic, I also said to the individual, please don't call me. Please don't email me. I don't want to have any conversation. And this wasn't a mean thing. It was an anger thing. It was more about, I knew something really dynamic had happened to me. And so
this individual liked to write these emails that were like this long, that long, those kind of people. Everybody shake your head, you know what I'm talking about. Good. And so I kept getting these long emails, and I actually asked them to do that because I needed documentation, because they were also somebody that I paid, and I wanted to make sure that I was covering, the legal parts. So as a minister, you not only do you listen to your voices or your communication, you also have to think about it as a business. So I did that, and eventually I was like, I'm going into silence. I'm not going to reply to you. I'm done. And so 3 months went by. Now we both wanted resolution of some sort. However, I needed to wait. And so this is part of the important part about not hearing your voice or your guidance, however you want to put it, is I just went into silence. I went into contemplation. I went into prayer. I went into contemplating what went wrong, what was my part, what was really going on. And also, I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear that dynamic voice that would talk to me. Now, let me talk just a little bit about that, because I want to say that my intuitive voice, I don't know about yours, but my intuitive voice does not talk to me in paragraphs. Because when it's in paragraphs, to me, it's my ego talking. It is something outside of me that is trying to, make me move in a certain direction. So my intuitive voice happens to be a word, an idea, something that kind of moves me along the path, opposed to, you got to do this, you got to do that, don't do that. It's none of that. It's more of a directive. And so I've come up with a saying, and you might want to write this down, because I have found that my intuition is my guide. And I have never, ever been failed by my intuition, ever, not once. So what I put down, which I think is really important, is not only do you listen to your intuition, but you live your intuition. Live it. So, and how I've kind of tuned into that, and I'll just give you some other examples. I used to travel a lot, and I traveled to Los Angeles. Los Angeles is very large, and you can get lost in Los Angeles very easily. And so I would listen to my intuitive voice, and it would say, go right, go left, go right, go straight. You're okay. Simple things. And it was always right. And I can remember one time I was in a deep conversation with someone, and the voice kept saying, you're going the wrong way. You're going to Burbank. You're going the wrong way. And the truth was, I got lost because I didn't listen. Now, those are just simple things, but I think it's important for us to realize that if we're not tapping into that source, that power, we are really missing out. We are really missing out. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. I also want to talk about what happened with me in the dynamics of this individual, and how that has helped me bring my ministry to a different kind of level. And that was, I learned that one person's voice, if they're bigger than, what I would say, suck up the air in the room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And someone that walks in the room and everybody gets quiet.
Right.
And I say this in a loving way, but that's the person that I don't want to hang out with.
And I want to let me go ahead and just interject something really quickly, Suzette. I love your stories, and it's going to go great places. But I also just want to say, because we're talking about ministers, and you're talking about your ministry, but also I noticed that this is what happens for me, just like in my personal life, like just individuals. So just it's not just even about the ministers who are here, but lay people or practitioners.
Mhm.
Everyone can use what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
It's just not just about the pulpit ministry. It's
Right.
fantastic information for all of us. So thank you so
Right.
much for
Oh.
sharing that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome. Yes, it is. It is true. And I think try to teach that, but it's as it comes, not as I don't just say it. I let them figure out and then I pull it in. But one of the things that I want to say is that during that time is that I lost my power, either as an individual, really as an individual. I lost my power. And that was one of the discoveries that I had to work on. And when I say power, it's not power over, it's power in, and knowing and feeling the truth about something. It's easy to be powerful over people, but people don't lead you. You can't lead people by being overly powerful. You lead people by making them powerful. So I learned that is a huge, huge lesson. I also learned that if someone tells me I'm wrong a lot, that I need to think about that because it's not really true. I don't, I know I'm talking to ministers here, but I want you to know if you're leading people, and that's how this has really helped me in my ministry. If you're leading people, it's not about things being wrong. Everybody has a dream. Everybody has a method. Everybody has a personality. It's more about guiding them to be their authentic self. And that was a big lesson for me because I needed to be my authentic self. I needed to know that I was okay. I was doing was okay. I'll give you a small example. Sometimes something quirky will happen in the church. Okay. And I lead my church a little differently. I make everybody responsible. Everybody's responsible. It's not just about Rev Suzette doing it all. I might clean the toilet once in a while, but everybody's responsible. I'm sure Sylvia will agree with that. But if something wrong happens, in other words, something weird happens, and this is the most important part of this, is if something happens and I go, ooh, that just didn't really work, or that was not right, or I'm missing that, I just say, hey guys, we need to change XYZ. This happened. The lights were on or the air conditioning was on, and I don't know what happened, but I just want to let everybody know we need to make sure we're paying attention. And I'll tell you, every single time the person has come back and said, oh, I did that. And it's so sweet because I'm not judging them. I'm not evaluating them. I'm saying, here, this is your center. This is your ministry. This is all about us. We all have to be responsible. Yeah. So it's kind of fun and that's a little different twist on making sure things get done right. It's more about how do we work as a community to make it all work for everybody. Because
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, but I'm saying that's a wonderful thing that you're saying right there, because not only are you doing that for your community as far as being a pulpit minister, but in communication with anyone, in communication with your family, with as individuals, because all of us, I think, have ministries, whether it's a pulpit ministry or an individual ministry or just you being yourself every single day and taking, this is what I love about New Thought, is that you're taking your ministry, it's alive, and you're taking it with you everywhere you go. Right. So what you're saying right there, when you're talking with people, is just for people to just say, this is the situation, not blaming, not judging, not just this is the situation. What would we like to do about it? What would we like to do about that? So I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a different way of managing, I think.
Yes.
Because I have people walk in and they're kind of like, don't know what to do. And it's like, you're part of the group. You're part of us. So you're all responsible for this. I've written some notes. I wanted to see if there's, well, let me just further that thought. and I think I might have said this in my talk at ANTN, and that is that I learned that no one person is more important than the whole.
Mm.
No one person is more important than the whole. So if someone comes to me now, and I'll get into intuition, but if somebody comes to me now and has a great idea, I go, I think that's a great idea. And I just let it settle into, and then it stays there. It stays in that mind of ours. And then intuitively, if it comes back up, there's generally several people that will say the same thing. And then I'll have an intuitive hit that that's what we need to do. But the other part of this is because I've come up with this own personal message that I've attracted people who are very creative, very responsible, very loving, and they respect each other, which to me is really important. So I wanted to say that. You had some good questions for me here. I think I should follow that a little bit.
Yeah.
How did I know if I lost the inner voice? And what happened? And I think I've mentioned that, and that is just the outer voice became louder than the inner voice.
Yes.
Has anybody had that happen? I like participation.
Yes. I mean, yeah,
Okay. I think it's important that you know that, and that you really, it's not about you have to be alert, but just pay attention. Keep it simple.
I think Sherry wants to comment on that.
Yes,
You
Sherry,
asked about
go
a
ahead.
question.
Thank you.
That I have found that for many decades I thought I didn't have a still small voice because I thought it sounded like Bill Cosby saying King Noah, and it turned out it sounds just like me. And once I discovered that, then I could tell if I was hearing it or not, if I was listening or not. And it's a great comfort to know that voice is always there, and so I can understand how you might not have liked having it go away. I would be destitute if that voice went away.
Yeah. Yes, please.
And I think Betty has something there.
Yes, Betty.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I also feel when I am hearing the intuitive voice, I feel it in my body.
Yeah.
Embodiment of the process of this hearing. And if I'm only hearing it auditorily, that means it's in my head, and I haven't allowed it to see through my body. And I don't have confidence in what I'm hearing me say until I feel it in my body. So that's a really important experience for me, whether it's just hearing the intuitive voice in ordinarily or hearing it in prayer. When I'm in prayer, it's like that. If I haven't had that embodied experience in a moment of prayer, well, okay, at least I prayed, but that wasn't.
Yeah. And that's really great, Betty, because I think you were talking about it, Suzette. Well, you talked about the loud voice, and so it's not just even a single loud voice. It's always lots of voices, with news and with people having their stories to tell, all that. There's voices around us all the time. So being able to know before all these voices come what that voice is for you, and certainly if you could feel it, what for me it's kind of like a resonation, like it resonates. That there's a resonation in my soul and my body when I know that that's spirit talking with me. But that also helps when there's a bunch of noise, that there's also a resonation. And everybody has their own way of hearing the voice, whatever that may be. But whatever it is, it's definitely going to be solid for you. And you're going to know exactly, yes, it is or it is not. So that's a beautiful thing as well. Thank you, both of you, for sharing, all three of you, actually, for sharing that. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing, Betty? Thank you for that. That is the absolute truth. I want to reinforce that. When you've done a prayer, I mean, I get chills, or I get, there's something that's going on inside. So thank you. That's a great ad. Thank you.
Yeah. Michael, do you have your hand up, or you just waving?
No, I actually had my hand up. This really reminds me of what Eckhart Tolle says is he says really your emotions are your body's reaction to your thoughts. So feeling it in the body means, if you're having a negative bodily reaction, you can be sure that's your head. If you're feeling the flow, that's a good way to know that it's spirit or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think
Excellent.
Michael also had something. Thank you so much, Lisa. I think Michael also had something he wanted to share.
I think you made such an important point, and that's when you got up and walked away. There's a
Yes.
time when you just have to say no. You know it. Your whole being knows it, and you just need to leave. And
Yeah.
I honor that. That takes courage, because there's so much. That's like the battle between the mind and intuition. But you have to just take that breath and make that move. And I appreciate your example, because I've experienced that not too long ago in my own life. So thank you.
You're welcome. And it
So
was
this was-
scary doing that. I have to say that was a little scary because, I don't want to offend them, but at some point I had to go, this doesn't add up. And so thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
There's a couple of more, Suzette. This is really generating some comments. Mary
This
Beth
is
has her hand up,
important.
and Missy, did you have your hand up as well?
Yeah,
I think
I have
Missy.
mine.
Okay, so Missy's had her hand up for a while. Mary Beth, so I'll just let Missy go, and then
I did have my hand up, and then I lowered it because I figured everybody was saying what I wanted to say. But I can remember a time, it's almost like a type of ghosting when you're there and you speak your truth, and someone that you consider in authority convinces you logically that that what you're saying is not true, or what you're saying is not right, and it sounds so logically, but yet and you go away feeling like you've had the snake oil treatment put on you. And so it's important when you kind of sort of get those itchy feelings, or those feelings like, yeah, it sounds okay what they're telling you, but still you get this funny feeling that something's happening that you don't know, and to take a breath and really be true to yourself. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes, especially if you're around people that are in authority, especially when you're in a church hierarchical system. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Reverend Carla said in the chat, that's called gaslighting, and she's exactly correct. Just gaslighting. Yeah. I'm sorry, Mary Beth.
Yeah, I had experience with our second church. Michael and I pastored 2 churches, and there was a lot of that divine descent and everything that was going on toward the end of the time there. And there just was a point where I had another one of those letters. We got another. Everybody knows those letters. But what happened to me is I absolutely knew deep in my bones that my soul assignment was done. And when I read the letter, I had absolutely none of that kickback resistance, or like get that, the divisive feeling. It just was so quiet. It was so beautifully quiet. And I sat down and I wrote the most loving letter of resignation. I mean, it just channeled. And I was so complete. It wasn't like, oh, I'm done, I'm out. I mean, it was just so peaceful. And it was just knowing it was complete, and there was nothing wrong with that. And it just was, I mean, it was the most beautiful feeling. And I mean, I can still feel it. And it was divine. It was absolutely right action. And I knew it. And it was very, very cool. And I've never been sorry. And I'm still in touch with a lot of the people that were in the church. And, Michael, the beautiful thing is Michael and I both have a lot of friends between the 2 churches we were part of. And, we lived through, like brand new ministers. We were like the wild, wild west. We wanted everybody to like us. We wanted abandonment issues. We had to go through all that crap. But, it just got to the point where I knew pulpit ministry was complete. And that was really cool. It was shortly after that I got into ANTN. So, yay. It was really cool.
Thank you all for sharing these comments and experiences. It's just beautiful.
I want to just say that I really appreciate that you tell the stories, because I think that we learn from that and we gain confidence from helping each other. So bring it on. That's what we're here for. Exactly what we're here for. I was going to say, did you have some questions for me?
I do. I was gonna I actually, was looking, just thinking about your talk at ANTN and had some great questions there. And when you talked about this story of losing your to intuitive voice, and you shared with us, you asked us to take a look at just what story, what was your story, which you've told us that, but then there were some habits, some things that you were used to doing that you had to let go of. What were some of the habits that, once you know, the stories unfolded, that you kind of come back and said, "Hey, this isn't working for me. This is just a habit of being. It's not really who I am." So, what do you recall? What some of those habits were?
I'll try and bring some of them up. Let's see. One of them I'm going to talk about is size.
Did you say size?
Size of your church, not your
Okay.
body.
Okay.
Okay. Size of your church. In fact, this week I was at a large church. We donated some really nice, good chairs, and I don't know how we got in the conversation about how big your church is, and I don't look at the size of the church. I look at the consciousness of the people in the church, because our job is to engage their consciousness and to, at least in my thought is to make them as authentic as possible while teaching them spiritual principles. And I've always done that. But I can just say, in the process of 15 years, I've grown very slowly, because I don't think I push people, but I do. What's the word? You comfort the afflicted, and you afflict the comfort on those that are comfortable. Is I'm always looking for how do we grow individually, and how do I encourage that? And what I find has happened, which is kind of fun, is that over COVID, you think COVID was bad, I think it was good, is it created groups, and really solid groups of people who are either reading a book. I've got 3 book groups going, and I've got a Wednesday night program, and we've created these groups of individuals that now go deeper into whatever the contemporary thought is of the day, because I think today is very complicated, and since it's so complicated, we have to give them a way to explore and not be afraid of it. I have 4 different groups that are doing that, and I didn't have to do anything about it. I just encouraged them. I started some of them. I had others that are really good at it, and you stay consistent. So I think that's one thing I learned. Trying to think, I had some notes here. I've kind of answered all of them.
Yeah. Okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
I
I
had
don't
some
know if
more.
that's helpful.
It was, yeah. It's absolutely. We just want to think about, what are some of the things that you were doing that you had to let go of. That sometimes we just get into a habit of being, and certainly COVID broke us up of some of those things that we thought was absolutely necessary. We find out, a lot of things aren't really necessary, and we're rethinking what is real and what is not from an individual perspective. I actually thought that I couldn't cook. Well, during COVID, I did a lot of cooking, and it turns out that I actually like it. So,
Yeah.
the habit of it. So, yeah, you're exactly right. But you also talked about, back to listening to you during the conference, you talked about forgiveness, and that along the way, as you were coming back to finding that voice, that there was some forgiveness that had to be done. So talk about that. Share that with us.
Sure. So let me say 2 things about that.
Sure.
First of all, as a minister, I think it's important to realize sometimes there are people out there that are what I call toxic.
What you call what now?
Toxic. Toxic. And we need to know who that is. And then we work on how do we release them. And I like to say, I release them to do their work somewhere else, and lovingly release them. Then, as far as forgiveness, when I started my own church, I started with a handful of people who left a very large church. And that was really hard. And I talk about this only because when you leave your community, you really are leaving a lot of your heart, and you have to grow through that. And so it took me 10 years. And that sounds like a long time, but I'll bring this full circle to forgive what happened. Because if it had not happened, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Right.
So I have fully, completely forgiven, and my eyes are just wide open now. I'm paying more attention. But how this comes full circle for me, and in my forgiveness practice, it was not about how long it took, which I think sometimes we think, oh, we got to do it tomorrow. We got to do it right away. I think there's a process, at least for myself, and maybe I'm the one that needs the 2x4 to move. That's part of the reason why I didn't leave. But I had to look at all of it. I had to look at all the parts. I had to look at whys. I had to look at how if I couldn't forgive, that affected my ministry to grow. If I couldn't forgive, I was condemning them not to do well, and I didn't want that. If people really loved me, they would come to me. Well, no, they like where they're at. Why are they going to do that? And then the other part was creating my new family.
Mm-hmm.
And I've created an incredible family. And how that has come up for me, if I take this to the next step, is I can remember one day I gave a talk on forgiveness, and a new lady had come in with her husband, and she really wanted to forgive whatever that situation was. And so after my talk, I went outside to say goodbye to her and so forth. And she walked away and she came back to me. She says, I can't forgive. I can't forgive them. And I said, give it time. Because I had experienced my own experience. Now, everybody has their own, okay? Some people can do it right away, and I just take more time, I guess. As I said, it's okay. Maybe you can't today, but give it time. And over time, things happen, things change, people change, our memory changes. And you okay there? And we learn to forgive. And I want to tell you how I nailed the forgiveness, because I've been working at it for a long time. Anyway, I went to a conference. CJ, we can hear you background, hon. I went to a conference, and outside they had a bowl of water. And they had these little, cards like this. And when you put it in the bowl of water, it dissolves. And so I thought, okay, this is it. This is the time I need to do this. And I wrote down their person's name, and I said, I forgive. And I took that and I crumpled it up and I put it in the bowl of water and I stirred it around. And guess what? It disappeared. And Betty, I had a visceral experience of it disappearing, and so did my forgiveness. And then from that, I then had the realization of what did I learn, and I've obviously grown from that. So forgiveness, I think, is a process and an open subject. We have to sometimes give people permission not to for a while. I have many stories which I won't go into, but it takes time. It just does. It doesn't make you out to be wrong. That's the other part. I think that we might condemn ourselves because we don't forgive. Well, excuse me, but stuff happens. Yeah. And we have to just allow to understand it better and find out what the value in that is. And when we find the value, that's when we know we've moved to the other side. Yeah. At least for me, that's been me.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
love what you said, just in terms of the fact that, and I think Martha Creek and Kim, you guys are all kind of working on peace and grief, which is something that is a process, and everybody's, always saying, whatever it is you're grieving about, get over it. And say, are you still grieving about that? It's been 4 months, whatever, whatever the time is. And it's just shocking because grief, forgiveness, all of those things are in the body. They're in different parts of your memory. And even if you've let go of one thing, something else comes up at a different time. Oh my gosh, is that still there? And you get to release or let that go or cry over it or whatever needs to happen. So just giving yourselves permission to even understand that it is a process. And that if you don't go through the process, you're simply living in the past. Your past is shadowing the future, and your present time right now is shadowed by it. So the forgiveness work in your ministry, in your personal life, in our individual independent ministries that we're doing, whatever it is that we're doing and how we're living, forgiveness is such a huge part. So thank you so much. You're exactly right for sharing that with us. Does anybody have any comments about that before we move to the next question? Because
Martha, please.
Good morning. Thank you,
Good
Suzette,
morning.
for all of you. It's lovely, lovely, lovely to count my blessings and see you all here, part of that. Just to make clear, PJ was so generous to point that out. You'll not hear Martha Creek say, if she's conscious at all, that you ought to get over your grief. It's the absolute opposite of that for me, but to learn how to relate to grief differently. So instead of expecting grief to go, to enlarge myself around it so that I'm integrated and carrying grief differently. And that's very much my forgiveness walk too. Suzette, I'm jealous that you could put something in a water bowl and it dissolve.
Yes, because
there's a few things that, and I've practiced forgiveness since my earliest memories. From a 3-year-old child, I was given the keys to the kingdom in a vision, which is my intuition. And forgiveness and gratitude are the giant keys for my life. And as you said eloquently, for living it, not just touting it, but actually living from that. So I've taken forgiveness very seriously, and daily forgiveness. And there's things that I have put in 8,512 burning bowls, danced to it, stomped it out, exercised it out, coughed it out, spit it out, puked it out, cried it out, and they have not left me. And I accept that. And therefore I accept that forgiveness is a direction to go in, not a tick box exercise, at least for me. And that it's imperative for me to comprehend this, to understand this, so that when I am not forgiven, for example, I can also include that.
Yeah.
And that that we can do what we can do. I can do what I can do and can't do what I can't do. And I've had funny stories about intuition I thought about sharing, and I wanted to make sure everybody got a chance to, including things like it's my biggest commitment to life, to God, to universe, to mind, to follow my own inner guidance. And especially when it's not popular, and even when I don't understand what this is all about. And it's very, very scary at times to do that. And I've asked for my directions to come in 2 words or less, because that's what I will likely know is actual guidance and actually can comprehend this. And it's been things like do nothing, which causes my skin to crawl off from being such a doer, and sit still. Sit still. And it's like, no, what else? What else besides
what
that?
else you got?
What else you got? Yeah, can I have a menu, please? So what you're speaking about is touching me, honey, and tickling me too, and a deep and profound reminder to stay the course with this. And I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Martha.
Thanks, Martha.
And I want to just get back to you. I apologize. I misunderstood. I mean, if that's not what I was saying. I was saying that you and Kim both say it's a process, that you're not the ones that say get over it. And so if I misunderstood that, That's not what I meant to say. So I apologize for that. I know who you are, and I know that's what you do. Sherry, I
Well,
know
you didn't say it, honey. You didn't. You said it exactly what you meant.
okay,
And
thank you.
just because of the semantics of it, how it came across, I just wanted to clarify it. So
Thank you.
you
Okay.
said it as true, honey. Yeah.
I want to make one comment before we go to Sherry, and that is, I totally agree with you when you hear those voices. You do, again, Betty, I love it you brought this up. You do feel that viscerally. You do feel that, and you do know. And there is a question that you had here, and then we'll go right to Sherry. It's like, how do you know
Yes.
when to and when not to? And for me, if I don't hear something, and that just happens to be my way, I do nothing. I just do nothing, or it'll come in floods. And one quick example, during COVID, one of our music minister passed away. And I had this feeling, this bodily feeling that something needed to change. I didn't know what. And because I knew if people came back, that's the memory they would have. And this is before anybody talked about doing anything different. And so, and my landlord had given me 7 months free rent. So I thought, well, I got time to do this before I decide what I want to do, if I'm going to stay or what I'm going to do. And so one day I got this, I call it a hit, change the stage, move the stage somewhere else. And I'd always wanted to do that, but I never did it because everybody else, the loud voices said, put it over here. So I physically moved the stages myself, which I probably could not have done, but I did it. And you know what? People that walked in went, wow, that's the right place. So sometimes you're, like you said, Martha, it does not make sense. It does not make sense. And so that's why I said, live it. Listen, but live it.
Yes.
And don't be afraid of it. And in fact, when I have people come to me and they get that concept, they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I just do it once, see what happens. Then do it twice, see what happens. And then just start paying attention. If I get them to that level, then I know that they're going to be better off. And to me, that's my work. That's the work that we do, is to help them. Anyway, that's enough for me. Sherry, what do you got?
Well, two things, and one of them really little. And that is my favorite one-word advice is wait.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely abhor. But I have discovered one day that I wasn't listening to the whole message. It was waiting is not doing nothing. And that one shook me and stiffened my backbone, I guess, really worked. The other thing is, I have found that, and I suspect I'm not alone in this, that if there's a challenge, I don't want to say a problem, but a challenge that I'm dealing with, and I don't finish dealing with it, it comes back and it comes back and it comes back. And then I went to the Biltmore estate at Christmas time, and they had this 3-story Christmas tree in a tower. And they had you go outside and you walked up the stairs around the tower and you saw the tree again and again and again and again. But you didn't see the same piece and you didn't see it from the same angle. And it got smaller and smaller and smaller the farther you walked. And I've realized that for me, that's what following guidance is. It's trusting that eventually I'm going to get beyond the problem, the issue, the challenge, and it's going to be smaller and less intimidating every time I look at it. And eventually I'm going to look for it and it's going to be gone.
Thank you, Sherry.
Great thought.
I see you, Michelle.
Well, I love this conversation. Thank you so much, Suzette. I love the intuition conversation. And I just want to share a quick little story of not listening. Because, I teach, I preach, I talk, I do my best to listen. But how many times do we not listen, right? We don't listen. And what I say, and Suzette, you said it already, is that our intuition will never steer us wrong. Never. And so this was years ago, I was some of you who know me might know that I really love clothes and I love shoes and, I love dressing up and all that good stuff. So this one particular morning before church, I pulled out these shoes that I absolutely loved and I put them on and I heard a little voice that said, yeah, don't wear these. They're not stable. I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? Of course, I've worn these shoes a ton. And I put them on and I tooled into church. And, as I'm walking in church, I heard, don't wear these shoes. They're not stable. Yeah. And and I'm like, yeah, stop it. Stop it. I'm just being paranoid. Stop it. I heard it a third time. These shoes are not stable. But I ignored it. I completely ignored it. And then that evening I was teaching a class and I was at the whiteboard and I was writing something on the whiteboard and I took a step back, wobble, fell back, broke this wrist in like 4 places, had to have surgery. I have a plate in this wrist now because I have to have, the doctor told me that my bone was so broken. He asked if I knew how to ski, if I skied. I said, yeah, I ski. He said, this is like a double black diamond. That's how wacky everything in your wrist is. That's how hard you fell on it. Because of course I put my wrist out to stop myself, which by the way, don't ever do. Not a good idea. Roll, don't put your wrist out. But anyway, I just had to laugh at myself after I got over, having to deal with a broken wrist of, wow, Michelle, you got 3, not 1, not 2, 3 hits. And you teach this stuff? Hello. So
what is going on?
What is going on? But yeah, it will never steer you wrong. And just and consequences can happen when you don't listen to it.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing some. This is just a great talk. Do you have anything other? Because I have a couple of other questions. If you don't have something you want to go ahead and speak about, Suzette.
Nope, I'm at your service.
Well, just in your just harking back to your time at ANTN at the conference. And by the way, Martha Creek put a little note in the chat. So guys, please take a look at that. Now is a good time to register for next year's retreat. There's still there's some rooms at the Unity Village, and that's where you want to be if you're going to be at the retreat. And they do run out. So go ahead and take a look at that. Click on that link that she has in the chat and take a look at that. So the question I had for you, Suzette, was you said that you asked the questions. I'm asking you the question. What conscious lessons are you living by now? And you probably have answered some of that already, but just to bring it to the forefront as a question. What conscious lessons that you've learned from having gone away from that intuitive talk, from the life the story that you tell, what conscious lessons are you living by now?
And I have said this, but if I don't hear it, I don't do it.
That's beautiful.
Just simple. If I don't hear guidance, direction, intuitive hits, whatever, I don't do it. And I wait.
Yeah.
Something we've not talked about. I mean, I think Sherry mentioned something, is I do wait. And what I have to know, and what I think I know anyway, is that I think that the universe is bringing everything into order.
Yes.
Into some kind of directive order, and something's not in alignment. And this actually is helping when I counsel people because they want it right away, right? Everybody wants it now.
Yeah.
And I can confidently say, if it's not moving forward, then something else is happening to bring that forward for you, and you have to trust. So that would be the other thing, is trust. I can say during that time, I didn't trust this process, and I was new, and I'd been a practitioner for 7 years, went through 3 years of school, did all the stuff, had the big congregants, all that, but I still didn't really trust it. And being on my own, creating the incredible group that I have around me has made me trust that I know, and not to devalue. And the part we haven't talked about, and maybe a little bit, I think someone said here, is that bad feeling. That, Martha, I think you mentioned that, is that feeling of this doesn't feel quite right. So my feelings have also become more of my guide. So if I have that feeling of something's not quite right here, then I just wait. I wait and I listen, and then the screen's moving, so I keep moving around here. So I'm listening to myself. I'm listening all the time. And sometimes the one thing I haven't talked about, and I think this is really important, and one of the things that I have done is I've surrounded myself with what I say extremely talented people, talented ministers, practitioners, creative people that if I need a break, I was thinking about this, I don't know, last month. If I need to take time off, I could probably leave for 3 or 4 months and everything would be just fine. Because my goal is to grow them, not to hold them down, grow them. And when they grow, it makes me better, it makes our organization better, it everything functions better. And it's so simple, but we're, sometimes people I would say ministers get afraid of people that might have a little power. Well, you give them enough, but then it's collaborative power, not just power over. That makes sense.
You said that. I want to come because you have a couple of things here I marked. I love it. You said power, not power over, power in. And I love that.
With
power in it.
Yeah.
I love that. And then you said also the other thing you said, listen and live intuition. These are little kind of catchphrases for me. I really like that a lot. Thank you. We're just getting close to our time up. Linda, I know you have your hand up, so if you could just be brief, because I'm going to need to turn this over to John. I think you have something to share. I don't know. We'll see. Linda?
Hi, everybody. It's great seeing the ones I know and seeing the ones I don't know, because I hope I'll meet you someday. I'll piggyback on Michelle with her intuition. I have so many intuition hits over my life, but this is one I did not follow. And I live at the very beginning of a community. And at the end of it, which is about a mile away, are condos. So this one morning I had this voice that said, take a walk. And I blew it off. And the next morning it said, take a walk. And I blew it off. And I have a little poodle that I do walk that finds anything. So the night of the second time I blew it off, I was going out and ambulances were going down the street and fire trucks and news cameras. And I thought, wonder what all that's about. So I came home and I don't usually listen to the news, but I turned it on. And what had happened is a woman in the condos, which were built up on a cliff, had gone out to pick some flowers and had fallen over the cliff and had been there for 2 or 3 days laying in these trees that were built up. And her son finally found her after 2 or 3 days. And I followed my intuition the first day, my dog would have found her. And I am so thankful she was still alive. Had she not been, I don't think I would ever have totally forgiven myself. So that goes into the forgiveness thing. But anyway, yes, follow your intuition, no matter how silly it seems at the moment.
Thank you so much, Linda. That is a powerful story. And I think we all have powerful stories of when we did and when we didn't follow our intuition. So thank you so much. Thank you very much, Suzette. This was a wonderful, wonderful talk. And clearly it aroused a lot of feeling and emotion from everyone. Everybody had a story around that. So thank you so much. We have a couple
I would say one quick thing. I want to encourage everybody to go to ANTN's conference. I have been trying to get other people to come because I have felt so much love from everybody, and it's a feeling that stays with me. And so if you've not been there, please go, find a way, start counting your pennies. It's a great experience, and I'll be coming forever now because I just I like being around where I'm encouraged.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You're really encouraged to be yourself, and I'm very grateful. So
thank you so much. I just want to tell everybody to be sure and register online on ANTN.org for the Thought Leader Thursday, which will be December 15th. Again, it's the third Thursday this time. Also, our upcoming speaker for December is Milagros Phillips, who was a keynote speaker for us at our ANTN conference. So again, you'll see a few people here, and you'll just start to understand why you want to go to an ANTN conference. It's just amazing. Wonderful speakers and singers, just amazing. We're going to have our ANTN annual retreat in April. Do you know Martha? Does anybody have a date on? Is it in April? Michelle, do you know anybody?
You're talking about our virtual retreat?
Yeah. Yes.
I believe it's in March.
It's gonna be March. Okay. All right.
I believe it's in March. Give me a nanosecond. You keep talking and I'm gonna look on my calendar real quick.
Okay, and so then finally, I just want to talk about a really large thing that's happening in August. It's the Parliament of World Religions, where world religions are coming together in Chicago. It's going to be a fabulous time, and ANTN is certainly going to be there with quite a few delegates. So I would encourage you to think about going to that as well. We are running out of time. We are at noon straight up. And so we thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate you. Suzette, thank you so much. Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I
you find
really
it, Suzette?
appreciate everybody's conversation.
Thank you. Did you find it, Michelle?
I did not find it,
Okay,
but
right.
it will be up on the website.
It'll be on the website.
in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Have a great
Thank you,
day. Love
Suzette.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Suzette.
Bye.
Bye.
PJ.
Thanks, PJ.
Love you guys.
Thanks, PJ.